when we came together, there were a lot of people in one room. A lot of people in our congregation wanted to learn about Islam, partly because they were a little afraid of what had happened, and partly because they realized that they have to get acquainted. They have to understand Islam. That it's important to understand a religion that many of us grew up without any understanding of at all. So in that first meeting, we had a chance to, first we broke up into small groups and had all of the Unitarian Universalists were in one end and all of the Muslims were in another part of the room, and we each thought of things that we were afraid that other people thought about us, and we made a list. And things that we didn't know if they thought we were bad or not, but just things, prejudices that we thought other people had about Unitarian Universalists or about Muslims. And then we shared the list with each other, and we got to speak from our hearts about what really matters to us about our faith.
If you've been in dialogue, you can't say anything general about all Muslims are this or all Muslims are that. You can talk about the 5 pillars of faith. You can say certain things about the religion and what the core concepts and beliefs are. But when you start talking about people, you have to know that person. You can't say that they are all one way or another. And similarly about Christians, similarly about Jews.
Those lucky ones who are blessed with dialogue try to see the events from a different angle. They begin to see the reality behind what happens, rather than just what is on the surface. After a while, generalized accusations are replaced by seeing the truth, comprehending the events, and embracing friends. New doors are opened in people's lives beyond which there is a powerful source of light.
When I first learned about Islam, it was when my son at age 12 decided to become a Muslim. I had an idea about traditional dress and what a Muslim at prayer looked like. But I really knew very little. I knew about the head covering, for example, and I think probably made some assumptions about the status of women, about women being more submissive to men. I now know that the way Muslim women and Muslim men relate can be quite varied, just as in any other group, and who know how to do the dishes. So I've certainly had some stereotypes melted just through the process of the dialogue group that we've had.
To me from Christianity, and I was surprised at the intersection of belief in the one God. The place of Mary, for example, in Islam was very interesting because I had been a Roman Catholic, and Mary is very important to Roman Catholics. And so it fascinated me to know that there is this religion which is perceived in the West as so very different, so exotic, so foreign, and yet so many of the basic beliefs of the religion are very similar to Christianity. The place of Jesus in Islam was very interesting to me. So that got me interested in reading more, and that began a year of academic study on my own, which culminated in a real spiritual awakening and a real conversion experience where I decided this path is a good path to follow. And so I decided to convert to Islam as a result of that.
I've learned about Islam in different ways from different people, but when I first understood that I really loved Islam was when I went to Morocco on an interfaith study seminar about 5 years ago. And that was the first time I'd ever been in an Islamic country. It was the first time I'd seen how Islam is lived. And I saw how it affected the people I think the idea of having to break for prayers 5 times a day gives you a gentleness and a centeredness and makes you more open to the idea of the holy. You're more in touch with it. But it felt to me as if the devotional life of Islam had people in direct connection with God, and it wasn't so important to be important as an individual. I liked that. I liked it a lot.
I get disturbed when I see people make judgments, human judgments, about who is or isn't good in the eyes of God. And one of the things I've come to appreciate about Islam is that only Allah decides, and that a person of good deed is likely to be seen quite positively by Allah, and it's not for other human beings to decide who enters paradise.
The most significant and effective keyword of the dialogue process is representation, because people evaluate those with whom they interact by looking at the consistency of their behavior, attitude, and their words. Once it is understood that what is being said and done are the same, and that this has become a way of life, a glance, a posture, even silence can carry deep meanings.
The way Muslims live is the first opening to dialogue. They have opportunities just on a daily basis to interact, in the street, in the seminary, in different conferences, first as human beings, one-to-one. And that's a really valuable way for people to learn that Muslims are not all one, Muslims are not all this or that, to break down the stereotypes. Second, they have the opportunity to teach. They get invited to speak at churches. They get invited to speak to groups, perhaps to another class at the seminary or at another school. People hear about them and say, let's bring that person here. And to me, this is the only way that we will be able to prevent this clash of civilizations that is going on. But so important for Muslims to be involved in whatever context they are and to go out.
From a long-range standpoint, I would recommend that members of the Muslim community actually continue just being who they are and how they have maintained themselves as good neighbors and friends and thinkers and doers. And I don't think it requires any type of different attitude, because I don't think the Muslim community has done anything wrong or has anything to regret. I think the Muslim religion is magnificent, and the Prophet Muhammad is such a fine example of how people should live. And I feel this is the time for the Muslim community to be resolute and not to change.
Now, dialogue does not mean that you give up your own personality or your own qualities, because the Islamic personality is very clear. It is based on the notion, as I said, of generosity, compassion, mutual understanding, learning.
First of all, we have a very difficult task in this country, because each of us represent Islam wherever we are, among workers at work or among students at school. We should give a good example of Islam and what Muslims are, because a lot of people, they have misconceptions and they don't have real knowledge about Islam. And we have a difficult task. I think Boston Dialogue Foundation is doing a good job